Alright, let's preface this by saying that I'm mainly talking about the roleplay hosted by my friend Funny Bunny J, and not the book that's by the same name. I'm not too sure how many people read or even heard about the book, but I want to bring it up just to avoid confusion for those that are familiar with a book that has the same name as the RP. And for those that were part of that RP, I know that someone said that they want to make a video explaining about it and why it's important to us, but I know that they'd be busy with college, so, yeah. And since the only thing that's going on in my life at the moment are chores, I thought I'd make a video about it. With all that said, let's get to it, yeah? I remember that I usually talk about Shadow Slayers to my friends, like, a whole lot. And while I did talk about it in one of my Drawing the Talk episodes, which was bad, mind you, I feel that I didn't bring it to justice in that episode, so I'm gonna rectify that with this video. I know that a few years ago, there have been plenty of content related to Shadow Slayers. Animation for multi-animator projects, animation memes, references in people's series, references in the RPs, a glorious shitpost Fanime that we still don't know who did it. Not to mention, there are 4 PMVs, 2 by the same person. It was insane, my dudes. So I guess I could tell some of y'all of what was Shadow Slayers. Shadow Slayers is a text-based forum roleplay hosted by Funny Bunny J, who created the Fanime Sandor Goes to School. It was hosted on Creative Studio Forum around late September of 2015 to December of 2015. It had up to around 18 to 19 players at most, though it did kind of reduce down to around 16, but that's a story for another time. It was around the time when the Fanime community was dying off, and because of that one drama that I'm still bitter about. The timing of the RP coming around that time is, perfect, if I'm honest. It was one of the biggest RPs that I ever been in, if I'm honest. The roleplays that came before and after it didn't even come close. The closest I can recall is No More Honor, which, unlike with Shadow Slayers, requires you to play as 2 characters instead of just 1. And even then it's not as close as old SS. I guess now I can explain of what the fuck was the plot of this RP. Without giving too much away, the plot is as follows. Taking place in its medieval time, Ignis was once a peaceful planet. 2 years before the events of the story, it basically went to shit in the blink of an eye. These dark creatures called Furin spawn, and they are pretty much unstoppable beasts. They managed to reduce the human population in half within a month. There was a prophecy that Valdis was the chosen one to defeat the evil beings of destruction. But it was no use. The chosen one was believed to be dead, and everyone began to think that they are bloody doomed. Well, almost everyone. A man by the name of Kama refused to give up on saving humanity. In an attempt to do so, he created a team to fight the Furins once more. He began forming a guild called the Shadow Slayers. By the way, that was just a basic synopsis of the story, my dudes. If you want the full story, I suggest checking out the stash link I set up in the description. Somebody else did wrote it at the time, so I will not take credit for it, though I did make some edits. But I put it up on stash because I know everyone I talk to don't like using Tumblr. So, now that you got the basic idea that this is a medieval post-apocalyptic roleplay, you would think that some of us got overpowered with our characters in the beginning, right? Ha! Nah, Meng. Nah. We made our characters suffer a great amount of deal, whether it's suffering in battle or having to deal with something related to their backstory. You know the works. Some of us kind of went beyond all belief, if I'm perfectly honest. A lot of the characters kind of struggled to fight some of the enemies. Now, if you think that this is like regular D&D, and we're just rolling the dice to make sure if our characters would fight well, thing is, a lot of the decisions of making our characters struggle to fight was actually our own decisions. There was no dice rolling whatsoever. Well, at least that's what I assume so, but this is before the time that everybody in the internet started to obsess over D&D again, so yeah. Though after we do make our characters suffer, we did tried to make them go back up on fighting the enemies, and everything was okay. For the most part, there were some cases where I'm just like, oh no, this enemy is big, we're freaking out, my dudes. I still remember when Fearos first showed up. I was scared. I know some people in the past kind of told him about the otherwise, but I do feel that Jane knew what he was doing and a lot of us just followed along. Not to mention that ya boy, Tenchi Hanka, made music for the roleplay. Like, real talk, how many roleplays have its own soundtrack for its battles? That's what I thought. With that said, there were a lot of hopes for the characters, and there are some characters that are in form of levity for, well, cuteness and comedic value. Anyways, because of the fact that a lot of us were artists, there were a lot of drawings in post sometimes. It's gone to a point where you can make a PMV for this roleplay. Hence why there's so many of them. Albeit 4 got completed because I'm pretty sure others may have busy lives, which is understandable. Now, one thing to note is that a lot of us have different writing styles in the roleplay. There's people like me who have the word count of a Dr. Seuss book, or a couple of pages at least. And then there are those in the roleplay that have a word count of a Lord of the Rings chapter. Like, holy McFuck, there's some of them I couldn't even keep up with. This was around the time when I was in my transitioning work program for school, and oh yeah, I was working on sour candy-filled donuts. Anyways, because of that, this is kind of the reason why I have not talked much about the characters. Because real talk, a lot of them are hard to keep up with, and I wouldn't be able to do them any justice, if I'm honest. So I'll link Jay's unlisted video about it, which has timestamps of its description. I will say one thing about it in relation to my character, Mimisko Lunaria. Mimisko is one of my best developed characters I have ever made for anything, like, ever. At least publicly, but even so, she has grown a lot from the beginning of Shadow Slayers to near the end. She started out as a wimpy character who was a bit of a pushover, and now she was able to fight back properly and become a legend. And the fact that I was given the final blow really shows how far I had Mimisko went. Hell, just thinking about it now felt like an honor. So much so that a couple years later, one of Jay's characters for his other roleplay, No More Honor, looks up to Mimisko. And she was not even part of the same universe as her, it was just a story in that roleplay, and not gonna lie, it surprised me and brought a bit of a smile to my face. Now, with all that said, would there be changes if Shadow Slayers was remade into more accessible formats like webcomic, which does exist but never continue for possibly understandable reasons, an animated series, or even a web novel? A lot of people forget that the web novel format exists. I'd say it'd be fixing all the grammar mistakes we've made at the time, especially me. Dude, looking back at the roleplay and seeing the grammar mistakes I've made makes me die inside. Like, for real, there was an entire month that I spelled the character's name comma as karma, and I didn't realize it until Jay messaged me. It was a really huge embarrassment on my part. Golly McFuck. If there's anything I would change story-wise, I don't know. I'd say make Mimisko's important dialogue seem less awkward sounding, but given how broken my English is, I don't think I'm the right person for that, if I'm perfectly honest. Though I think that relates to the grammar issue, so, oof. Alright, for real, I don't know. I'm critical of my own work, but not so much with other people's works, so, yeah. That said, there might be another thing I want to do that's a little bit more lighthearted, which is adding other people's characters who are not in the roleplay in this story. So that way, they could get involved. Yeah! With all that said, I'm not too sure if it'll work, in a sense, given that we have about 21 characters in the roleplay, with one of them being a literal child of one of the characters, so it's just a matter of will they fit. Anyways, that's basically my 2 cents. I'm sure that a lot of those that were in the roleplay have some things that they want to change. Especially if it relates to their own character, that I'm sure that they regret about some aspects they put in that character. Just a hunch. One more thing I want to say before I go, and this is kind of a bit of a semi-joke that I was shook about. Because my friend KHF McAwesome told me about Final Fantasy 15 and how there's a character in that game named Ignis, I am tempted to make a neighboring planet called Noctis or Luna Freya, just because I want to. 'Cause I'm a nerd. With all that said, I think I'm done. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a lovely day. This is ChibiGC of YouTube signing out. Goodbye!